Welcome back to the Illinois Fighting Illini Dynasty. I'm your host, Jay Shoob, and we got another great video here for you guys today. It is the off season. We have finally made it here, and we will be transitioning from Season 3 on over to Season 4. There's a lot to get to today. I'm going to try to keep a good pace here with this video. A lot of good stuff to cover today. You guys are going to like it, so let's get into it. So first off, David Deal was offered a contract extension by Illinois. And let's take a look here. Illinois has offered Coach Deal a 7-year contract extension. More than well deserved. You guys can see that A+ prestige there. Definitely a reward for the culmination of what has happened over the last 3 seasons in this dynasty. Over the last 3 seasons, a total record of 30-10, winning 75% of his games, a 21-7 conference record, 1 Big Ten championship, 5-3 versus rivals, 8-5 versus the top 25. And what really stood out to me is that Coach Deal is 6-1 against the top 10 so far in this dynasty. He really shows out against the good teams. And then, of course, 2 bowl wins in his tenure here. So a big 7-year extension for Coach Deal. And as far as some other coaches here, going through the coaching carousel this offseason, we start off with Minnesota, who fired their head coach, PJ Fleck. They hired Neil Brown, who was the offensive coordinator over at Clemson. So Minnesota, another Big Ten West opponent, gets a new head coach. And then South Carolina, one of the other bigger schools here that had a head coaching vacancy, Will Muschamp was fired. I was surprised he was still there at this point. And they hire head coach Joe Rudolph from Duke. So a couple big name programs get their new head coaches. And now looking at the Big Ten here, the coaching changes. Coach Deal, of course, got the extension. But look at Ryan Walters, the defensive coordinator. His contract expired and he's no longer our defensive coordinator. I couldn't believe this. I was expecting Ryan Walters to get an extension, if anything, for having the number 2 defense this past season in the entire country. He had the number 10 defense in Season 2. And he just left. His contract expired, and we now have a new defensive coordinator, and we got Jerry Azzanaro. You see, we signed him to a 4-year contract. One of my few quarrels about this game is that you can't control who your coordinators are. But anyhow, I went to see where this guy came from, and he was the defensive coordinator over at UCLA. His contract expired there. They hired Derek Mason, so Jerry Azzanaro is our new defensive coordinator. And then as far as the offensive coordinator, Tony Peterson, he got a 5-year extension. And if anything, I thought this would be flipped because Illinois had a rather average offense last year. But Tony Peterson gets a 5-year extension. He's had some good development with Deuce Spann. He's definitely got that going for him. So Tony Peterson will stick around for a while. And as far as the other head coaches in the Big Ten, of course, we just saw Neil Brown was hired by Minnesota. Scott Frost receives an extension. That one is definitely well-deserved. In this dynasty, Nebraska has been successful, and you can see the past 3 seasons since 2014 is where we started this dynasty. And 11-3, 9-4, 11-2. Nebraska won the Big Ten in Season 1 of this dynasty. They just won the Cotton Bowl, so good extension there for Scott Frost. And look at Northwestern. They fired Scott Sloan. He was there for 1 season, and they already have a new head coach, Clark Lee. So they fire Pat Fitzgerald, they hire Scott Sloan, and then he gets fired after 1 season. Tough times over there at Northwestern. And then Jeff Brom gets an extension at Purdue. So Jeff Brom, you can see there the first couple seasons in this dynasty, they didn't make a bowl game, but they had a very good 10-3 season. They were definitely a top 10 caliber team, and Brom parlayed this past season into a nice extension. And then Paul Chryst. This one is definitely well-deserved. Wisconsin has arguably been the best team overall in this dynasty in the Big Ten Conference. To see the last 2 seasons, 13-1 and 12-1. They won the Big Ten last season, and they lost the national championship to Auburn. And then if it weren't for our Illini, they would have won the Big Ten this past season. That's no doubt in my mind. So now moving on to players leaving. A lot of sentimental value here with this senior class. This senior class was a huge part of this dynasty from Season 1 up until now. And these guys really set the bar and the standard, and these guys were the core group that really accomplished all the things that Illinois has accomplished over the past 3 seasons, and that starts with Marquez Beeson at cornerback. We are definitely going to miss Beeson. He, of course, was the Jim Thorpe Award winner. He won the Bednarik Award as well this past year. He was the best cornerback in all of college football. We convinced him to stay. Last offseason, he considered leaving for the NFL draft, and I'm so happy that we convinced him to stay. Look at those grades there. 99 awareness, 97 coverage. A lot of good grades there for Marquez Beeson. He will certainly be a first-round pick, and we're going to miss him a ton. 6 interceptions on the year for him as well. Chase Hayden, another guy who will be very much missed. He was a bell cow this past season. He also was very good in season 2 as well, where he split a ton of time with Chase Brown, but Chase Hayden really got to shine this past year. He was the RB1, and you can see he nearly got to 1,500 yards rushing. The past 2 seasons, he averaged over 100 yards per game, which is very good. His rushing touchdowns doubled this past season as well. He was just so good. He was a weapon in the passing game as well. Definitely going to miss Hayden and that very good production out of the running back position. Moses Okpala at defensive tackle, another senior that slotted into this role that Illinois has had a ton of success with in this dynasty so far. 17 tackles for loss and 12 sacks on the season for Okpala. He was quietly very good this past year, and he will certainly go off with a very good productive senior season. DeLayvin Campbell, another senior as well that stepped up as wide receiver 1 this past year. And you can see the numbers definitely got better year over year. His total receiving yards was over 400 this past season. And honestly, DeLayvin Campbell is a guy that I kind of feel bad. I feel like he was underused in this dynasty. You could see he had 96 grade speed, 99 awareness, and he's definitely a player that could have thrived in a much more offensive system, but we were happy to have him here. Bryce Barnes, he got to play a little bit with the injury of Seth Coleman this past year. Ryan Mead got a little bit of playing time at linebacker as well. Brevin Jones at left tackle. Brevin Jones, a guy that really struggled in season 1. You can see he gave up 11 sacks in the first season. He was absolutely dreadful, but he really turned it around. And look at this past season. Brevin Jones was the lone senior offensive lineman. He got 13 pancake blocks and only allowed 2 sacks at the left tackle position. He was very good, and I think that was a huge plus for the offensive line. Keith Randolph, man, we are really going to miss Keith Randolph here. Keith Randolph was arguably one of my top favorite players on this defense, the 2-time Lombardi Award winner. He was an absolute beast. You could see 78 total tackles for loss in this dynasty. He had 12 sacks in season 1, 19 in season 2, which led the NCAA, and then 11 this past season. 42 total sacks in the past 3 years of this dynasty. He was an absolute beast. 5 forced fumbles as well. Just, I can't say enough good things about Keith Randolph, and I think it's absolutely criminal that the game algorithm doesn't have him as a draft prospect here. And if this was realistic, Keith Randolph would be certainly a day 1 or a day 2 guy. Kyron Cumbie, another guy who we are certainly going to miss. He's been a huge part of the offense over the past 3 seasons. So many highlight reel and memorable moments with Kyron Cumbie and special teams as well. You can see he led the team in receptions all 3 seasons of this dynasty. His receiving yards went up year over year as well. His average yards per reception as well. He also had 6 touchdown receptions this past year. Kyron Cumbie, we are certainly going to miss. He was a weapon that was utilized very well. He had 99 speed. Josh Plore was a guy that didn't really get to play much on the offensive line. Griffin Moore didn't play much the first couple seasons in this dynasty, but with the departure of Luke Ford after season 2, he really got to step into that starting tight end role here in season 3. And I expect a little bit more from him, but he did a solid job all around. He was quiet at the beginning of the year. Isaiah Williams, we started out this dynasty in season 1 with Isaiah Williams beating out Matt Robinson for the quarterback job. And from that point on, Isaiah Williams had a very decent sophomore season where he had 18 passing touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. Isaiah Williams definitely showed a lot of promise, and we thought that the arrow was pointing up for him. In season 2, there was definitely expectations for him after his sophomore season, his first year as a starter. And you can see in season 2, his numbers just went down a bit. The production just wasn't there. And he still was the guy, though. And then going into season 3 this past season, we all know how that went out. Isaiah Williams just struggled mightily out of the gate. Illinois lost 2 games earlier in the season, and then he was relieved for Deuce Spann. And Isaiah Williams, definitely a guy, was a huge part of this dynasty, and we will miss going out. He definitely deserves that recognition. Seth Coleman, I thought was another quietly good player on this defense. Seth Coleman was very solid at the defensive end position. He won the Lombardi Award in season 1. He got injured this past season, so his production went down a little bit, but if he had a full season worth of stats, I think he could have gotten possibly to 8 or 9 sacks. But being in the shadow of Keith Randolph definitely didn't help his case, but he was a very solid player, and that's 2 very good defensive ends that's going to be departing from this team. So we will get into that a little bit later on in this video. Shammond Cooper, another guy who I thought was one of the best players on this defense. Shammond Cooper was quietly a very, very good player at the linebacker position. He had 59 tackles, 11 for loss. Shammond Cooper flew all over the field, and I thought he was very good in his senior season, and he really stepped it up in his role. He was a leader off the field as well. Shammond Cooper, one of the unsung heroes from this very, very talented defense, and we are going to miss him for sure. Now the draft results, and Marquez Beeson, sure enough, he goes in the first round of the NFL draft. Our first round pick of the NFL draft in this dynasty goes to Marquez Beeson. And boy, we are very happy that Coach Deal decided to convince him to stay. And he goes in the first round. The promises made, promises kept there. And looking here at some other draft results, I just wanted to show you guys Auburn, who won the national championship last season. They had 5 guys go in the first round, which I thought was incredible. They've been very good in this dynasty. Clemson had a couple guys go in the first round. They just won the national championship, if you guys saw the previous video. Taysom Fomachon goes in the 4th round. He had a very good national championship game, so I was interested to see where he went there. Trayson Potts from Minnesota, guy we've seen a lot. He goes in the 4th round. Nebraska has a couple guys, Corcoran and Robinson. They go both in the 2nd round. So I thought it was interesting to see some of the players that we've seen a lot in this dynasty from opposing teams. Notre Dame, Brendan Clark and Foskey go in the 1st round. So Notre Dame has a 1st round quarterback go off the board for them. Ohio State, you could see they have a few guys getting drafted, but CJ Stroud only goes in the 6th round, Julian Fleming only in the 7th round. I think this definitely exemplifies how Ohio State is really underperformed in this dynasty relative to the talent that they have. Penn State, we saw a lot of them, of course, this past year. John Dunmore goes in the 4th round. Joey Porter Jr. goes in the 5th round, along with Marquise Wilson. Not surprising to see a couple guys from that defense go in the draft as well. And then Washington, our Rose Bowl opponent, you can see they had a handful of guys, especially from that defense, go in the draft as well. And then Wisconsin, Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz goes in the 1st round of the NFL draft. I'm glad that he's going to be gone. And that Wisconsin team has been very good over the past few seasons. No players are going to be requesting to transfer, so that's of course always a good thing. And now moving over to recruiting. This is a guy that was just added to the board, Russell Hill at fullback. He was sort of a last-second addition for this team, and I figured that since our fullback Max Rosenthal, he's going to be a senior going into the next year, I figured maybe we'll take a flyer on a fullback and redshirt him. But you can see he's, believe it or not, had a lot of offers from other schools, so not a big deal if we don't get him. Andy Parks, he's one of the final receivers that we are targeting this offseason, putting a good amount of effort into him. We decided not to pursue any of the tight ends. This is a position where we're going to be very thin going into next season, but Ray Davis, he didn't want to play for Illinois, so we're going to have to just punt away at tight end, if you will. At tackle, Eric Singleton is a guy that, not a big deal if we don't get him. We have a lot of young offensive linemen in tackles, so we won't be pursuing him that hard. Dan Lumpkin at defensive end. We want another guy to pair with Keenan Norman at defensive end, another guy we want to bring in at this position, so we're going to put a lot of effort into Dan Lumpkin and fend off TCU. John Williams at defensive tackle. We already got Jonathan Sims, and if we can pair him with John Williams, those are going to be two very, very good blue chip prospects bringing in at the defensive tackle position. Illinois is going very heavily after him this offseason. And then at linebacker, we already have Bill McDonald and Anthony Horton who committed. So Kyle Robinson there. It's been a two-horse race between us and Missouri, and we decided to back off on Kyle Robinson. We don't really need him. And then the athletes, Lawrence Carter and Thomas Parsons. Both guys Illinois is going to pursue very heavily, especially Lawrence Carter. He is a guy that can play running back, wide receiver, or defensive back, and Illinois is not messing around. They see that Nebraska is also on his list, and they want to make sure that they get Lawrence Carter. And then Thomas Parsons, he can play defensive end, linebacker, or safety. We're going to put a good amount of effort into getting him as well. So this is who we got. Lawrence Carter commits to Illinois. Andy Parks does as well. John Williams, Thomas Parsons, Dan Lumpkin, they all commit. Illinois basically got all the top guys that they wanted. And you can see most of the guys that Illinois went hard after they got. TJ Lindsey actually commits. We didn't really go that hard after him. And Russell Hill goes to Ole Miss, and that's not really that big of a deal. You can see Russell Hill there at fullback. We just took a late flyer on him, not a big deal. But look at the receivers. We now get Andy Parks, and it wasn't even close. He wants to come over to Champaign, pairing him with Pugh, Hawkins, and White. That's going to be a very good receiving core. Ray Davis at tight end actually goes to Northwestern. Northwestern gets the top tight end in this recruiting class, believe it or not. So we're going to be facing him. Dan Lumpkin commits, and that was not really close with TCU, so very good. Two solid defensive ends there. John Williams, we get him easily. That was a very good late addition to the board there. Two very good defensive tackles coming in. Kyle Robinson, believe it or not, you could see he wasn't even committed. He's not committed anywhere. And I was kind of surprised to see that, since it says that we are at the top of his list, but he's not going to sign anywhere. And then as far as the athletes, Lawrence Carter commits as well, along with Thomas Parsons. Illinois got both of those guys. A very good offseason. No surprises on signing day. Definitely a different pace from what happened last season. And now Illinois' final recruiting class here. Illinois finished with the 12th ranked recruiting class in the country. This is Coach Steele's highest ranked recruiting class so far in this dynasty. And this recruiting class is very good. Illinois got 6 4-stars, which is a high in this dynasty, as well as 12 3-stars. This is going to be a very, very good recruiting class, and Illinois is definitely riding the wave of momentum on the recruiting trail that they have got from their performance on the field. Ohio State and Wisconsin fall with the 10th and 11th ranked class, respectively, right above Illinois. You can see some other schools up here: Georgia, Auburn, Texas A&M, USC. Nebraska actually finishes with the 2nd ranked recruiting class in the country, and Notre Dame was number 1. Notre Dame got 3 5-star recruits, so Notre Dame with the number 1 class. And then I also wanted to see some other Big Ten schools here. Michigan was right behind us at number 13, and Minnesota came in with the 15th ranked recruiting class. So I was very surprised to see 6 Big Ten schools in the top 15. And 4 from the Big Ten West in there as well. Now some positional changes, starting with the offensive line, the annual offensive line shuffling. We're going to start with Blaze Sparks, who's a senior. We're going to move him from left guard. We're actually going to kick him out to right tackle. And in accordance, that means we're going to move Pfeiffer Griffin, who's a second-year starter, over to left tackle, because we want to make sure we have that more experience, the better player over at left tackle. So Pfeiffer Griffin will slot in there, and you can see he definitely is a better option to start over those other 2 guys. At center, we decided to move Shane Gore, since Shane Gore is a redshirt freshman and he's buried down there on the depth chart. He would probably never start at this position. We're going to kick him out to left guard and just sort of balance out the depth there at that position. At right tackle, Tom Samuel, he's stuck behind Nate Mason and Smith there. He's a guy that probably wouldn't start, so we're going to move him out to right guard again to balance out the depth there. So Tom Samuel moves to right guard. And then the athletes. We had 3 athletes come in this class. And the first one, Lawrence Carter, We decided to move him to running back because running back is where we need the depth. We only have 3 running backs right now on the roster, so we're going to move him over to that position. Thomas Parsons, he can play defensive end, linebacker, or corner, or safety, and we're going to move him to linebacker as well because we are thin at linebacker. And then Joel Sherman, the last guy, he can play defensive back or wide receiver, and we're going to move him to defensive back since there's a logjam at wide receiver. So all those guys fill out the depth where they are most needed at their respective positions. And now the training results. Deuce Spann is going to be the #1 overall rated player going into this season with a 93 grade. Deuce Spann, he improved his grade by 3 points. Samari Collier and Kenton Peoples both improved their grades by 5 points each, and very excited about the future with those 2 guys behind Spann. Samari Collier will get his shot in season 5, and then Kenton Peoples, a redshirt freshman, he's going to be very good. I cannot wait to have Kenton Peoples later down the road at quarterback. At running back, Josh McCray and Reggie Love, those will be the 2 guys who will be getting the bulk of the carries, primarily Reggie Love. Reggie Love certainly has earned it. In my opinion, he's shown a little bit more than Josh McCray, and Reggie Love is a little bit more explosive, and he will be the primary running back, and he improved his grade by 4 points. So I'm very excited to see Reggie Love fill in the shoes of Chase Hayden. At wide receiver, there's going to be a bunch of receivers this season. Patrick Bryant, a 4th-year junior, he improves his grade by 4 points. James Frenchie Jr., Kenny Rogers, Brandon Hall, Robert Breedlove, David Marquardt, a lot of those guys that we haven't seen a lot of. You're going to start seeing a lot of them next season. At tight end, the only 2 tight ends we have rostered are Zach Anderson and Robert Franklin. And I was impressed by Robert Franklin. He improved his grade by 6 points. But Zach Anderson will be tight end 1. At left tackle, Pfeiffer Griffin, he improves his grade by 4 points. He'll be the new left tackle after we just moved him over from right tackle, as you guys just saw. At left guard, Brody Wisecarver, Illinois, is very high on him. He improved his grade by 6 points, which is very good. He's a redshirt junior, and Illinois is very high on Wisecarver. They think that he has a chance to get drafted as long as he stays for his senior season. Josh Kreutz at center, he is a senior, and he improves his grade over to a 90 overall. Justin Cook down there, he's going to be the starting center in another year or 2. He improves his grade by 6 points. Kevin Tyler as well at right guard, another senior along this offensive line. And then over at right tackle, Blaze Sparks, another 5th-year senior. We moved him out to right tackle, so he will step into that role. He finally gets a starting role in this offensive line, and his grade improves by 4 points. Now over to the defense. At defensive end, Sedarius McConnell. He is the new starting defensive end, and he improves his grade by 5 points. So we will see him over at left end, filling in the shoes of Seth Coleman. And then at right end, Ryan Williams, the redshirt sophomore. He will step into that role, and he has very big shoes to fill, following in the footsteps of Keith Randolph. So I'm very excited to see how these guys perform with Illinois starting 2 new defensive ends. At defensive tackle, Jerzon Newton, a 5th-year senior, he improves his grade by 5 points. All these guys had good development over the offseason. I'm very excited. This is a position that's very good. Trayvon Riggins, another senior as well. And Mike Hughes, he's an 86th grade redshirt sophomore, and he might not get a ton of playing time this year. In the near future, he's going to be a guy that Illinois expects to be drafted down the road. I'm very excited about the future with Mike Hughes at defensive tackle. At linebacker, Calvin Hartz, he improves his grade by 4 points. He, of course, had a big role last season. Patrick Coleman as well, the 3rd-year starter now, improves his grade by 5 overall points, and guys like Dylan Rosaic and Joe George behind him there at middle linebacker. And then Jermaine Mendoza, and we haven't seen a ton of Jermaine Mendoza so far in this dynasty, but I think we're going to see a little bit more of him this season as Illinois is losing Shimon Cooper at linebacker, so we'll expect to see a little bit more of him. At cornerback now, this is a position that will be losing Marquez Beeson, but now Prince Green, Daniel Edwards, Wyatt Anderson, who's shown a ton of promise as a freshman. Those guys are going to be seeing the field a lot now here in season 4 coming up, and I'm excited to see how this position turns out. It's definitely got a ton of depth. I wouldn't say there's a guy that really stands out a lot more than the other ones. Prince Green and Daniel Edwards are both fourth-year starters. They started at cornerback in season 1 as true freshmen, so a ton of experience at this position, which is something that we were not able to say at the beginning of this dynasty. At free safety, Cornelius Taylor, the All-American, he improves his grade by 5 points. We expect to see another big season out of him. He was a freshman All-American as well. And Cornelius Taylor, now one of the more veteran players on this defense, along with Darren Robinson at strong safety. He had a very good sophomore season, and now he'll step into his junior year looking to potentially be drafted down the road as well. And Reggie Mathis at kicker, he improves his grade by 7 points. Look at the kicking power. It's a 90 grade kicking power there, an 83 grade kicking accuracy. Reggie Mathis, he's going to be a sophomore now. He showed a ton of promise as a freshman, and Illinois is very safe and set at kicker for the years to come. And then Hugh Robertson will be a 5th-year senior at punter. So now cutting players. The first few guys here wasn't really that hard to do. We had to cut the roster down from 76 to 70. Keith Duckett at quarterback, we didn't even recruit him, so he gets cut. Another couple guys who we didn't recruit over at running back. William Williamson from South Carolina, what a name there. But we didn't recruit him. He's going to be cut. And then Michael Robinson as well. He also will be cut, so that leaves 4 running backs on the depth chart now. And then TJ Lindsey, another guy over at linebacker that we did not recruit, and he committed, so we're going to cut him as well. And then the final 2 guys, these decisions were tough. Demetrius McMahon at defensive tackle. He's a redshirt freshman. I was excited to get him a couple cycles ago, but now with the addition of John Williams and Jonathan Sims, those guys are both going to be redshirted this year, but once they are not redshirted, McMahon's just not going to be able to see the field, so I'm going to have to cut him. And then at wide receiver, I had to do something about this because we took in 4 receivers when we didn't really need them, and Brandon Hawkins just happened to be the odd man out here. Just a guy that I didn't think would really see the field that much compared to the other guys on the depth chart, so we cut the receivers down a little bit. And now redshirting players. At running back, we decided not to redshirt Lawrence Carter because you know how running backs work. You end up seeing a little bit of the third string running back throughout the season, and if Josh McCray or Reggie Love were to get hurt, we would see Lawrence Carter, so I didn't want to deep dive into that problem. But Lawrence Carter will not be redshirted. At wide receiver, decided to redshirt all 3 of these guys: Andy Parks, Jacob White, and Marvin Pugh. There's just a log jam at receiver, as you can see, and there's no sense of not redshirting those guys. We'll see them later on in their careers. At center, Terry Townsend, who will be very good in the near future, but he gets redshirted for now. At defensive end, I decided to redshirt both Keenan Norman and Dan Lumpkin as well. And then a defensive tackle, we're going to redshirt Jonathan Sims, but not John Williams, because I think Williams has a chance to see the field a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit later here. And then at linebacker, decided to redshirt all the true freshman linebackers from this recruiting class. That includes Bill McDonald, Anthony Horton, and Thomas Parsons. So all those guys will get redshirted. And then at cornerback, both the true freshmen coming in here, Wesley Lynch and Mike Wise, they will get redshirted as well to sort of separate them from Medlock and James on the depth chart there. And then at safety, the final redshirt of this class will be Joel Sherman. So I wanted to do a little bit of a change here with the defense. I decided that I want to change the base defense that we've been running. We've been running a standard 4-3, and I've decided that to change that to a 4-2-5 going into next season. And I wanted to do this mainly because of the way the roster is constructed, especially on defense. We're just very strong along the defensive line, and the secondary now is very strong. We've done a very good job of recruiting that position over the past few years. And really the weakest unit on this defense now are the linebackers. And you can see with the depth at cornerback and safety, I wanted to get guys like Wyatt Anderson in there, as well as Cornelius Taylor, Tyler Strain, Quincy Bolden. A lot of talent here that I just didn't want to waste, so I decided to go to the 4-2-5. Jorel Washington, another guy that I want to see have the field a lot. And you compare that to the linebackers here, and Illinois is just very thin at linebacker now. So the 4-2-5 essentially will make 2 starting linebackers on the field, and those 2 linebackers now, granted, they will have a much more important role being the only 2 linebackers on the field, but I think Patrick Coleman and Calvin Hart and then a little bit of Jermaine Mendoza, I think those guys are suited to fulfill that need. So that's what we're going to do here going into next season, just playing the strength of the roster. And then another thing that I decided to do was change the sliders up. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a little bit now, and the College Football Revamped team recently came out with a new slider set that you can download, and I'm not able to download that slider set, but I tried to emulate it as much as I could. And the main reason was because I just wanted to get a little bit more of realistic outcomes with the games. You know, if you follow along with this Dynasty, a lot of times the things that really stand out from this Dynasty is that the pass blocking is not very good. I can't tell you how many times I've had to scramble with my quarterbacks on the run because I've had just no time to throw. So I want to be able to have my quarterback stand in the pocket. I want to be able to throw the ball downfield. And the other thing is that I wanted to have the receivers and the DBs play the ball. That's another thing that doesn't really happen that much. And allegedly one way to help that was to put the offensive and defensive pass interference house rules here up to 100. And that just is going to help force the players to play the ball a little bit more. So that's mainly what I wanted to do, was just have my quarterback with more time to throw in the pocket, but also make it, you know, not have all the... I wanted to have my quarterback to stay in the pocket more and have just a little bit more time to throw without having to worry about getting sacked in less than a second. And then I want to be able to fire the ball downfield without having to worry about getting picked, and have DBs play the ball, have receivers play the ball, and get much more of a realistic outcome. I wanted the run blocking to go down. It's been very easy for me to just run the ball down up the middle, you know, whenever I want to, and pick up an automatic 5, 6, 7 yards. I don't want the offensive system to be so lopsided with the amount of running versus with the amount of rushing versus passing success that we've had. And then defensively, one of the things that I've noticed is that opposing offenses normally have success throwing the ball against our defense but cannot run the ball, and the rushing against numbers are just extremely lopsided at the end of the year, and I want those to sort of even out more. So a way that we can make it a little bit harder to stop the run is another goal that I had with these slider sets. So we'll see. These are obviously subject to change. If these tend out being horrible and the gameplay is just not good at all, then I'll change them back, or just change them back to what's a similar iteration of what I already had with the previous slider set. So just wanted to update you guys there. Now the schedule. We are going to open up against UCF at home to open the season. Last year we played UCF on the road at the Bounce House. So we will open up against the Knights at home, completing that home-on-home series. And then week 2, we're going to go travel to Northern Illinois. I decided to play a smaller MAC opponent, so I figured, why don't we play Northern Illinois and then play them on the road, play them at their place. We'll give the G5 some love and play the road game there, since we played them at home in season 2. And then week 3, you guys can see the big game. We're playing Notre Dame at Soldier Field. And I promise I did not know that Notre Dame was going to be preseason number 1 going into this year, so that just makes it even better. I had this Notre Dame game on my eyes. They lost the national championship to Clemson the previous season, and I also saw how good Soldier Field looks with this new mod update, and I really want to play in some of these neutral field stadiums, so cannot wait for that. And then we open up Big Ten play by hosting Michigan. This will be our second time playing Michigan. We beat them in the Big House all the way back in season 1. Now we get Michigan in Champaign, so that's one of our East opponents on rotation. Of course, we play Penn State now every year out of the East. That's become a little bit of a rivalry. We get them at home next season as well. And then we go on the road to Michigan State, second year in a row going at Michigan State. And then Minnesota, Iowa at home. Then we go at Nebraska, Home versus Purdue, that will be senior day, and then we end the season with 2 road games in a row at Wisconsin and then at Northwestern. So once again, another backloaded schedule with the rankings, but this is going to be a really tough schedule. This could end up being the toughest schedule that we've had so far in this dynasty. Now another thing that I wanted to change is the recruiting rules, and obviously you can't change the recruiting rules in the game, so I kind of wanted to set my own new recruiting house rules and restrictions, because if you guys play this game, you know it is kind of easy to recruit very well, and there is a way to game the system. And it's something that I've seen a lot of YouTubers and a lot of other people that have dynasties, they've been doing this, is they've been putting their own self-imposed recruiting restrictions to just make the recruiting game a little bit more challenging and a lot more realistic with the outcomes. And one of the things that is obviously the easy thing to do is as the season progresses, there's just 4-star caliber players that just aren't recruited by big schools for whatever reason, and it's very easy to go and scout them, figure out which ones have the highest ranking, and then go and offer them a scholarship and recruit them. And you can easily get those caliber of players because for whatever reason the big schools just don't recruit them. And that's something that I wanted to change, and something that I definitely exploited, especially this past season with this recruiting class. I definitely exploited that a lot, and I want the outcomes of recruiting to be, 1, more realistic, and 2, just a lot more challenging for myself. And so these are the house rules that I will be enforcing starting next season. So first of all players that are added to the original preseason recruiting board are fair game as normal. So all 35 that I add to my recruiting board in the preseason, those are fair game as normal. Nothing changes with how I recruit them. But this is the big one. I cannot scout recruits added in season to the recruiting board. So once the regular season starts and I start adding new players to the recruiting board that weren't in the original 35 during the preseason, I'm not allowing myself to scout those players, because like I said, it's very easy to just scout them and take a shotgun approach and figure out which ones are the gems. So this will definitely make it a little bit more challenging, and I want to make sure that we won't know how good the player actually is until after they commit. After they commit, then I'll be able to scout them. So this will definitely be a deterrent for just taking advantage of those 4-star caliber players that aren't recruited by big schools. In addition to not being able to scout the recruits added in season, all 3-star and lower recruits can be added, but all 4- and 5-star recruits must be in a pipeline state or have top 10 interest in Illinois to be added to the recruiting board in season. So in addition to not being able to scout new recruits added to the board, the ones that are rated 4 and 5 stars must be in one of our pipeline states or have top 10 interest in Illinois for me to be able to add them. And it's something that I think will make the dynasty a lot more fun, and we'll have a little bit more realistic outcomes with the recruiting. They already have been pretty realistic in this dynasty if you ask me, but this just adds a little bit more difficulty, a little bit more of a challenge. And I'm going to have these house rules in the description of every video going forward, but this is just one thing that I decided to go forward with, as I've seen a lot of other people do it, and it'll add another fun element and challenging dynamic to the recruiting game. So that'll do it, guys. The off-season video has concluded. Hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely tried to keep a good pace on this video. Hope it didn't feel too rushed, and hopefully you guys stuck around and enjoyed all the content here. Thank you guys so much for watching this dynasty. Those of you who have watched this dynasty from season 1 all the way up to this point, thank you guys a ton. It means the world to me, especially those of you who have been liking the videos or commenting as well. It definitely makes this a lot more fun for me. And I'm going to take a break here from uploading for a little bit. Not sure how long I'll be taking a break from uploading from. I would very much like to keep going, of course. It's been a ton of fun. I put a lot of work into it, and the dynasty is slowly growing a little bit. I would like to see it get a lot more views, obviously, but it's something that I'm glad that I've put out there for you guys, and I will see you guys later.